scholarships relative to non-Singaporean students. Now, the funniest thing that ever happened these 2 weeks was when the new National Development Minister, one day I woke up and I saw the news, and he said, I cannot release the cash over valuation statistic to you anymore because it's misleading. So can you imagine, for a long time, this was the statistic that was cited by the previous minister as evidence that the cooling measures were working. Now all of a sudden he says, I cannot tell you because it's misleading. Now, if you are a person who wants to sell your house and you find that they don't even dare to tell you the statistic anymore, it must be very, very high, right? Wouldn't you ask for even higher price? So this really spooked the market. Now, in the same breath, so I think after elections, every day we hear about transformation, that things will change, but some things perhaps are not changing. I mean, how can you decide what to disclose, what not to disclose, just because you think that it's misleading? To me, it's even more misleading because they don't disclose the COV data, but they give you the breakdown of all the different locations and different type of flats. So anyone can just take all this and add them together and come up with the median, right? But if everybody does that, it is not the correct figure, right? If I'm a real estate agent, I will calculate the figure is very high, right? Because the price will go up. Next, let me talk a bit about, can't you be transparent and tell us how many Singaporeans go to the casinos? The answer was something like, oh, because of the Casino Control Act, we cannot release or use the data, that's why we cannot tell you. Now, I'm amazed, I cannot imagine how a casino legislation can be crafted in such a way that such an obvious statistics that everyone wants to know how many Singaporeans are entering the casinos cannot be disclosed. Strange legislation, right? But here's the funnier part. Last year in September, the Ministry for Community Development, Youth and Sports actually disclosed in Parliament that more than 1 million locals visited the casinos. So if the Act, as is being reported today, says that you cannot disclose, how come the Minister can disclose? But of course the difference here is, today's report, we are asking for how many Singaporeans visited casinos. What the Minister disclosed last year is how many locals, which is Singaporeans and permanent residents. Yesterday I wrote an article about the unemployment data, which just came out a day before. The unemployment rate for residents has gone up to 4%. A quarter ago, it was 2.7 or something. So it's a big jump. You have 81,300 people unemployed. Now here's the problem. Every year we ask the same question, you never get an answer, which is, what is the breakdown for the Singaporeans and the PRs in the unemployment data? The reason this is important is we estimate that the unemployment rate for Singaporeans must be much higher. Why? If you're PR, you have no job for quite some time, you probably go back to your country or you go to another country. If you're Singaporean, you have no choice, you are stuck here. Right? So if we take an assumption that the Singaporean to PR ratio in the population is not the same as the Singaporean to PR ratio in the unemployment data, then maybe the unemployment rate for Singaporeans may be, say, about double, 8% or something. Now, if it's at 8%, you're looking at something like, out of every 12 Singaporeans, 1 may be unemployed. Yesterday, someone wrote to the Online Citizen. I'm a columnist for the Online Citizen. And he alerted us to an article in the newspaper recently where a Singaporean, when he reached 55, he didn't withdraw his CPF because he left it because at 2.5% the ordinary account, he says, if I take it, I put in the bank, I get less. And then when he tried to withdraw his ordinary account, subsequently, he discovered that $10,000 had been transferred automatically to his MediSave account. Now here is another instance of what I call a change in CPF policy that nobody knows about. It was never announced in Parliament, was never reported in the media. So as it stands now, we know if you reach 55, you have CPF that you can withdraw. My suggestion is to you, you better withdraw, right? Because if you don't, subsidize what? he was told no ward available. So he wait until finally he could not take it anymore. And so he decided to upgrade to a higher ward. But he didn't have money to pay for the deposit. So he used his credit card. And of course, he had problems and he said, you know, I have to end up paying 24% my credit card, right? So I did some research. I spoke to some friends in all the hospitals. This is what I discovered. No? Now, if you go to a hospital, first, you mustn't go and see your GP, because you see your GP and then he refer you to a hospital, you cannot go to subsidized ward. So you have to go to the polyclinic and queue up again to get a referral letter, then you can go to the subsidized ward. Now you're in A&E, and then you need to be hospitalized. You say you want to go to subsidized ward, they say none available. I understand the benchmark is 12 hours. That means you cannot be made to wait for more than 12 hours for the ward that you want. And normally, after a few hours, normally you don't have to wait 12 hours. You will either be transferred to another hospital with a subsidized ward, or you'll be upgraded to a higher ward in the same hospital, but you still pay the lower class ward. You know, so the problem today is most people don't understand all this. So they get very stressed, you know, that they will want to upgrade. Now, when the last time it was asked in Parliament, if a person goes to a higher class ward and then decide to downgrade, what is the chances of success? The success rate is 1%, 99% failure. In other words, 100 of people who having gone to a higher ward and request for a downgrade, only 1% were successful. So who were there to go to a higher ward?
No, I think you can downgrade, but you still pay the higher ward. So you can downgrade, but
I don't think anybody will say that to you. You can downgrade and still pay the higher class ward. Right? So there are all kinds of issues out there. And let me just end by sharing with you something about what I think will be an issue as we move forward. The biggest problem for Singaporeans, to me, the biggest issue is really our CPF. Why? Like Kin Lian and I, we're from RI, Raffles Institution. I have classmates, schoolmates. They have a degree from Singapore University. Those days not called NUS, called SU. Then drive taxi, security guard, no job. Increasingly, you look at the data, a lot of people who are older cannot get a job. And so the solution is the Re-employment Act, which will be implemented next year. Now, here's the problem of the Re-employment Act. Come next year, if you reach 62 years old, this is what your employer can do. Your employer can say, okay, I can either offer you re-employment, or I keep you in the same job on the same terms, or I don't offer you re-employment. So of the three, the second one is the best because you keep your job, same pay, same terms. If offer you re-employment means can offer you any pay, any job. So I may say, okay, I cut your pay by half, I send you to Pulau Tekong to work, and you work 12-hour shift. You want it or not? That's called offering re-employment. Because the way the Act works, the employer can offer any terms at all. The only thing they cannot discriminate against you at 62 is your age. In other words, you can be discriminated by all what they call reasonable factors. Performance, your ability to work. The re-employment survey just came out a few days ago. And you look at it, there are some very strange statistics inside. It says something like 61% of the establishments, all of a sudden at 62, you are a good performer, that means your performance is always good, and you're medically fit for the job. All of a sudden for 61% of establishments, there's no suitable job available anymore. Now, of course, if they don't offer you re-employment, they only need to compensate you $4,500 to $10,000, one-time compensation. And here's the best. Re-employment is, if offered, most of the employers say will only be on a yearly basis. Some even offer re-employment at less than a year. So it really does not make sense, because if you cannot get re-employment or your pay is cut substantially, and your CPF payout is now delayed to 65, what are you going to do? There's only one option available for you. Sue your children, because At 60, you can already sue your children under the Parents Maintenance Tribunal. But I tell you what is the worst thing that's going to happen. Many employers may simply do not employ older workers or get rid of them even before they reach 62 so they can forget about this Re-employment Act issue. Thank you.